is Alexey. I only recently became a sort of freelancer. Before that, I spent a lot of my career in different sort of investment banks. But I followed Ethereum from the very beginning very much, and now I decided to start doing it full time. And what I'm going to be presenting is that I've designed it probably a year or more ago in a different context. It was in the context of a sort of music and video distribution. You could imagine like an iTunes store where you have many consumers and many customers and many vendors. Then this basically is just my take on the payment channels, and I hope that would contribute to the further discussions on this topic. So let's do a bit of a refresher where the payment channels first came from. It was first proposed for Bitcoin as a part of the Lightning Network, and the general idea is that they use the 2 out of 2 multisig, payer and payee. And they need to do a couple of things to first establish the channel because they don't trust each other. So essentially the payer, before he deposits the funds into the multisig, has to first give an assurance that he will be able to withdraw it after a certain time limit. That's why there's a little bit of handshake. And then, as with the other payment channels, then the payer will give a half-signed transaction. Half-signed meaning that only one signature out of multisig is given, and then the payee can always append a second signature to make the transaction valid and relayed on networks. This could happen many times, as you see with the multiple arrows. And when the payee decides to settle, it adds the second signature and relays it to the network. By this time, the channel is settled. And in Bitcoin, essentially, the settlement means that the funds which were originally deposited in the multisig will be split one way or the other between the payee and the payer. At that point, this channel is finished, so it cannot be reused anymore. And yes, and if there was no activity in the channel, if let's say the payee has disappeared, then after a certain time, the payer can complement the refund transaction with its signature and get the refund. And the channel is now turned down. So in Ethereum, we have, because it's much more flexible, first of all, how do we do this in Ethereum? Obviously, there is no such thing as a half-signed transaction in Ethereum because at the moment, all transactions are signed exactly by one signature, by whoever originates it. And so, basically, the solution, which I also saw in Raiden, I was reading the code, is essentially have a synthetic multisig where you have to present the number VRS, which is a product of the digital signature in ECDSA, as your half-signed transaction. And then this little code, which basically will just check whether the payer is actually signed it, is essentially verifying that this half signature. But it's more than that. So because the Ethereum is much more flexible, you can do many more things in this Ethereum payment channel than you would do in Bitcoin. First of all, you can have intermediate settlements. So you, like in Bitcoin, once the settlement has occurred, then the channel is not of use anymore. In here, you can actually do it intermediate settlements. You can do bit by bit. Then you can also in the Bitcoin payment channel, only this payee can settle. In here, you can sort of simulate that the payer, if he wants to settle, he can ask the payee to start the settlement process. Or alternatively, it could do some, like in Raiden, I was looking at the netting channel, so where both parties could request a settlement, but then the other party could challenge if the request for settlement was incorrect. So essentially, it's sort of you can do in some ways settlement in both directions. But strictly speaking, again, only the payee can settle. And this has implication because you don't have to make this timeout there very large, because as long as you can say that the challenger could challenge the settlement request within a reasonable time, so you can close the channel very quickly.